Good morning. Welcome to Red Edge Live. I'm Les Patterson with Red Edge Mentoring, and each week we come here to share stories of people who are using their story to influence their own life and influence the lives of other people. And today we're going to have a story that's a little bit uncomfortable. We're going to talk about racial issues. We're going to talk about tension. We're going to talk about discrimination. We're going to have an uncomfortable conversation that just happens to be with a black man, because right now, Black lives matter, because there is a lot of concern that has been going on over the last few weeks, which is echoing a lot of tension that we've felt in our country for a long time. And so joining me today is Nate Daring. How are you, Nate?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
It is my honor. So a few weeks ago, and things started to erupt in our country, and eruption really is a great word for that. There was a bad incident. There was a man named George Floyd. He was being detained by police officers in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and in the process of that, some really unethical, some potential unlawful things happened. Mm-hmm. And that man was killed in the process of being detained. And our country has just erupted. It's erupted in violence and protests and riots. And it's erupted a lot with people wondering, like myself, what's going on here and what should I do about it? What should I think about that? And so I'd like to share, if it's all right, I'd like to share a little bit what led me up to making the call to you.
Okay.
So I had to think for myself. I had to think, okay, do I have an obligation to myself to better understand what's going on here? So I thought a little bit about my own exposure to people of races other than white. I thought about my growing up, and I thought about my time in the military. I thought about my time as a business leader and as a business owner, and the interactions that I've had with people that are non-white, black people and Asian and Hispanic and Middle Eastern. I spent time living with the military in Iraq, surrounded by Middle Eastern people, but I wasn't really with them. It was kind of a different thing. And I had to process all of that. I had to think, what does that mean for me as a white person? What does it mean for me as a community member? What does it mean for my family? And then I had to go to the next step and say, okay, is this a conversation that I should have in a public setting, such as like we're doing now through my voice, through Red Edge Live, through the writings that I do? And I reached a point that I felt it was very important for me to have that conversation. And that's what led to a phone call to you. So we've known each other for about 20 years. And so I reached out to you here a few weeks ago, and I just said, Nate, tell me what's going on. Tell me how you see this as a black man. So my first question is, how did that make you feel when I called you? Was that an awkward thing for me to call you? Did it feel like, Les, you shouldn't have called me? What was that like?
No, I thought it was cool that you took the time to call. I had a couple other friends that had called, and it made me think, why haven't more people asked that question? Like, what can I do to help? What do you need from me? How do you feel about this? And so I thought that was it was pretty cool that you did take the time to call and ask those questions. It wasn't uncomfortable at all. It's one of those things that's, we talked a little bit earlier, it's the same thing like if my mom died and you called me, you're not going to bring my mom back, but you want to be there for me and you want to support me and say, did your family need anything, or are you able to get through this, or we can share a similar story or something like that, so that we can bond and get through. But yeah, I was grateful for the call.
Okay. Well, so what's the difference from your perspective between maybe why would some people feel hesitant to call and say, hey, Nate, you're a black man. what's going on here versus, hey, Nate, your mom just died. Are you doing all right? Is there a difference between those two conversations?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same. They're both hard conversations, but one's taboo. One's race. And race has been one of those underlying things that's gone on for hundreds of years, and people don't want to talk about it. I mean, we can all share stories that when something comes up racial, immediately people are, I'm not racist, my best friend's black. Or I'm not racist, we have a black person in our family. Or I'm not racist, we adopted a black kid from Haiti, or something like that. Just because you know somebody of another race, or just because someone's in your family, doesn't mean that you're not. I've learned, like over the last month and a half now, that there's a lot of people that say they're not racist, that are racist. They've become keyboard warriors. They get on Facebook and they say things, and they get friends to support that and rally. And so they feel like the more people that support that are agreeing that they're also not racist. And then you have like closet racism. You have people that don't say anything at all, but they feel a certain way, but they're afraid of backlash or what could happen. And then you have people that genuinely don't see it. Like I've had people say, oh, I don't see any color. And at the end of the day, like, what are we talking about here? Like, we're talking about skin tone that you didn't choose for yourself. Like, you showed up with it. And you can't change anything. It's almost like, I'm a bigger guy, right? I'm chubby. It's like somebody saying, hey, you're fat. Like, I don't know that. But what is that, your comment supposed to do to me? Like, are you just trying to break me down? Or, I don't know, it's just an interesting thing. But it's super taboo. Nobody wants to talk about it, but it's a perfect platform and stage right now to talk about it because it's become global, because of social media, because it's gone viral. It's not just us talking about it here in Utah or Happy Valley. It's international. Like, everybody's talking about it. And until you get out of this bubble, like, culture is different everywhere. I mean, I grew up with all different types. When I was a little kid living just outside of London, there's black people, there's Arab people, there's Asian people, and they all have English accents. It's just a melting pot. People come together from all different places all over the world and intermingle, and there's no issues, but sometimes we make it an issue.
Yeah. So in this process, Nate, and I'm going to turn to my friends that are listening. We're going to talk about things that may be uncomfortable for you as well, and that's why we're having this conversation, is because the only way for an uncomfortable conversation to become comfortable is to actually have it. And the only way to better understand things that are hard to understand is to actually ask questions. And that's what we're going to try to do, Nate, is ask questions of each other.
Okay.
And better understand. And if nobody else, like my friends, I hope you take a moment and listen to the things that are going to be shared. And there's a good chance that some things that'll be said today you may disagree with, or you may not understand. But I invite you to open your mind and open your heart and seek to better understand things just at a little bit of a better level, or a deeper level, or a more broad level. I don't ask for agreement by any means, but I do ask for an open heart and an open mind, and I encourage that. And and Nate, that's what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to have an open heart and an open mind, because I want to learn. I don't suppose that, because I have said those things. Oh, well, I have friends from the Middle East, or I have a friend who's black. I had friends in the armies who were black. I have a Hispanic gal that cut my hair. And so am I acting racist by saying that, or am I trying to veil things? I've had to ask myself that question. Do I have racial feelings that I may not be aware of? There's a time period where I thought to myself, I don't see skin color. And not just over the last few weeks, but over the course of my life, I've recognized, for me, I think it's really important to see skin color because that's a reality, Nate. You are a black man. You've got a darker skin tone than I do. That's part of your feature. And it's different the fact that you have a beard that's black and gray and I don't have a beard because you can change that.
Correct.
You can shave the beard off. Now, I can't grow a beard like you, Nate, but I can get a little bit of a stubble.
Okay.
And it has a little bit of gray in it too. So we can change that, but you can't change your skin color.
Right.
I can't change mine. Now I could get a little more tan,
Yeah.
but I can't change my skin color. So is there one from your perspective, should we see skin color or should we not? Should all be the same or should we see that difference, those unique characteristics?
Yeah, I think we should see it. I mean, what you don't want to have happen is people see it and then make it negative. And I think that's what's gone on for a lot of years. But just sweeping something under the rug and saying, "Oh, I don't recognize this," it's a discredit to what other people are feeling and going through. So, I was doing a little bit of research over the last couple of weeks, just kind of, somebody made a post on social media. It was just one of those things I just had to think about. And they said, I'm just going to come out and say it. And so I always loved it when the conversation starts like that. And they said, what if we had white entertainment television? And what if we had our own hair salons and our only this? And what if it was white only this and white only that? And, black people and other people of color would be so offended if we had all of this. And I was like, but you did have all that. There was a time when people of color couldn't be on television, that white people played that role and dressed up in blackface. There was a time when white people put signs up that said, this drinking fountain is only for me. This restaurant and hotel are only for me. Coloreds go to the back, or coloreds can only clean here. You can't eat here. And so that segregation has gone on, and the reason that you have those things now, all black colleges or black neighborhoods or black entertainment television, is because white America at the time said, you can't have any of this, so you have to go and create your own. And that's where you get your Jim Crow laws that come in. And then now it's being spun as, because blacks have that, that's racist. That's reverse racism. There's racism from all different races. I'm not trying to make this just a white or black thing. I've experienced racism from every shade of everybody, and it's everywhere. It's in other countries. There's still slavery going on, but those are things that I think that we just need to think about, rather than just saying, "Hey, it needs to be said," and I'm just going to come out and say this. But you got to go back further as to why things are the way that they are, and this is a conversation that we could have for hours and days and weeks and years. People can say, "Oh, well, if Black Lives Mattered, why are blacks killing blacks?" We can get into the communities, or the lack of funding in communities, or the lack of police in communities, and that being able to get out of a situation economically or socially. I remember growing up and thinking I would just be a statistic. I remember growing up and thinking, what am I going to do with myself? Like, I can't be a cop. I was a little kid and wanted to be a police officer, but my friends would be upset with me if I was a cop, because grow up, cops are bad. And so you're either going to aspire to be a rapper or an athlete, or end up in jail or a gang or something like that, or you get out of the system and you go and try and do better for yourself. And it's not that I think any person of color doesn't want to do that. I mean, we see it every day. You see people of color from across the border south in Mexico trying to get out of their situation, their culture, and get to where they feel like we have a little bit more privilege and a better life and an opportunity. And they're not standing over there saying, "Hey, bring me." They're trying to figure out their own way to get here. And so we all just want the same opportunities. you know?
So I guess in that aspect, and I see a little connection here actually to me.
Okay.
So I grew up in a relatively, well, a very poor financial family. It was tough, food, clothing, schooling. I never dreamed of going to college as a kid. Even up through high school, I just never thought I would be able to ever go to college. I didn't know about grants and student loans. That was something that just never come to me. And it wasn't until I saw my sister, who's a year younger than me, she actually went to college and she got a scholarship. And I thought, oh, well, maybe there is a pathway. But other people helped me to see potential. So in some aspect, I was like trying to get out of my circumstances. Now, but those circumstances weren't placed on me by my skin color. Now, there were other factors that went into that. My parents' upbringing. My parents had never been to college. Their parents had never been to college. I don't even know if any of my parents' siblings at that point had higher education. So when my sister went to college, that was like big deal. I mean, like the first in generations but it wasn't skin color that was limiting us. But in that aspect, and I'm playing a little bit of a devil's advocate here, shouldn't all lives matter then? Because, I mean, my life was challenging growing up, so shouldn't my life matter? Shouldn't there be attention given to, to my circumstance or to someone else's circumstances that's not Black, or is white, but it's tough for them? Why should Black lives matter, or should all lives matter?
I think, the narrative going on right now in America, people are using that as all lives matter. I've heard of all lives matter, Black lives matter, blue lives matter. We're human beings. We have emotions, heart. You're born with no preconceived idea of how things should be. We're loving human characteristics, and we're supposed to take care of each other. Of course, all lives matter. And it doesn't need to be said, though, every single time there's a crisis, right? The issue right now is that Blacks feel that their lives aren't as valuable or matter as much in certain situations. And whether you feel like that or not, because it's happened to you or not, whether you've had a cop kneel on the back of your neck or not, that doesn't matter. What matters is how someone else feels. It's the same as someone that's got a mental health issue and saying that they have depression. Because you can't see it, doesn't mean that it's not real. Doesn't mean that they're not going through a hardship. Doesn't mean that they lay awake at night and struggle with sleep or think about suicide or don't want to be here or hate their life or don't want to go to work. What we need to do as humans is understand that that's being addressed and then see what we can do to make them feel supported and loved and cared for. Do you have somebody that's going through a situation where they have a family member pass? It could be somebody not even close. It could be someone's grandma in Florida. Do you say, well, my grandma is in Idaho. She didn't die, or she did? No. Say, what can I do for you? How can I help you? Can I make dinner for your family? Let me take the kids. Oh, you're gonna go to the funeral. What can we arrange? We're helpful. You should want to be helpful. That's why all lives do matter. But the blue lives matter is something that it's interesting. I have a ton of law enforcement friends. My sister's in law enforcement. There is no blue lives. That's not a skin tone, right? You're a police officer. You're a law enforcement officer, and at any time you can quit your job, and you're gonna be okay. You're not gonna get a knee on your neck unless you've done something wrong or you are a certain color. So the Blue Lives Matter is part of the All Lives Matter. Of course, we want to protect police officers. Of course, you know, you don't want to condone violence against law enforcement or
Correct.
that's not even human. Like the idea that that kind of stuff goes on is sickening. And yeah, when that stuff happens, we make a big deal out of it, right? You lose, even before all of this stuff, if we lost a member of law enforcement, they're supporting that person's family. There's a memorial. There's you know, a cruise. You got the police motorcycles and the convoy, and you know, he gets a proper burial and everything like that. The same as somebody that comes back from the war in Iraq. What we do, and we give the flag to the wife and the spouse. We make a big deal out of that because it's important to everybody, but it's really important to that person.
Correct. Now, I like that comparison. It's important to everybody, but it's really important to that family. You know, I'm thinking today happens to be an anniversary of 15 years ago today when I was in Iraq that we had one of our soldiers killed. And so my mind has been with that family, with his parents, a tremendous amount today. You know, because today means a lot to them. This day is really important. And for us as his brothers, you know, the ones who got to come home, means a lot to us. You know, some will go visit him today. We'll take a ride down to Hurricane where he's buried and go pay their respect. And that's happened every year since he come home. Now, that's important to Ron Wood and his family. What's going on right now, what's kind of been triggered because of the incident with George Floyd and now other incidences, that's important to them and their family. And now it's become really important to a race of people, to Black people. There's a gentleman, his name is Emmanuel Achu, and I hope I'm saying his last name correctly. He hosts a program where I've kind of borrowed the name of our conversation from. It's called Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. Emmanuel is a Black man. And through his reach of people, he's invited guests to come and have a similar type of conversation. And he had one recently with the actor Matthew McConaughey. And in that conversation, Emmanuel drew this comparison. He said, right now, as a world, we're going through a pandemic. The coronavirus, the COVID-19 disease is impacting the world severely. I mean, people are dying. Hundreds of thousands of people are sick. It's impacted families with quarantines. I mean, you and I didn't get to shake hands today, and I'd love to shake that hand, but we're not supposed to do that right now. Businesses have been impacted. So right now, there's a lot of attention going to that. But does that diminish the fact that cancer is still important? Or heart disease or child diabetes? Those things are still important. But right now, the pandemic created by COVID-19 is the one that matters, and it's getting our attention right now.
Yeah.
Emmanuel made that comparison to the Black Lives Matters right now. From your perspective, Nate, is that an appropriate comparison? Could that be a good way to look at that?
Sure, I think it's a great way to look at it. You know, it's sometimes as human beings, it takes us a while to understand things, right? It's not always black and white, and sometimes you need to come up with different analogies or metaphors to use for everybody to kind of understand. I lost a grandmother to cancer, and what's going on today with somebody who's lost somebody to COVID doesn't diminish my grandma's cancer and that there's no cure to that or anything like that. I mean, as we're sitting here talking about we need to find a cure for COVID-19, well, what about my grandma's cancer? No, I know that we're working on it. We have scientists every day that are still trying to take care of that issue.
Right.
But we have a bigger issue right now, and it's affecting more people right now. And so it's hard to take care of everybody, right? But at the end of the day, you know, we've got to pay attention and keep focused on all of it. But the loudest voice right now seems to be, you know, people of color that are feeling inadequate and like they're not being taken care of, and they're not asking for more than, or you owe me more than this just to be equal. And you go back through the years, and it hasn't said that you're not a human, but through the years we've said you're just not an equal human. You don't have the same right. And we have to learn as human beings. I mean, we did it with women before when women couldn't vote and women weren't supposed to work. And you look back and it doesn't mean that women are less than. I mean, I would say women are greater than, but they just want to be equal. And I think that's what we need to work towards.
To you, Nate, what does the word equal mean to you?
Same opportunity, not looked down because of, we say that we don't do that. We say that we don't judge that. I've had to fill out mortgage applications and have to check my race on an application. And we can spin that any way. We say, I want to make sure that we're not discriminating, so we need to know what race you are. Why does that even matter? Just take my name and my social. And if my name is Nate, which doesn't tell you a whole lot about my race, but I may have an ethnic name or something that would. If my name was Jose or Jamal, somebody may look at that and automatically think differently about that. So,
yeah, I have a friend who is Asian, and she has what some would say an American-sounding name.
Okay.
And she has an American-sounding voice. But when people come and meet her, they see a short Asian person. And she says sometimes people then do a double take. Says, you're not who I was expecting. Now, it's not that they actually say that, but sometimes that's a feeling that is portrayed because her name and her voice over the phone don't indicate.
Yeah.
That's caused me to think, have there been times that I have been surprised by that? That, for instance, Nate, if I don't know if I had heard your name before I first saw you. I don't remember that. But it's caused me to think, as you and I have talked, would I have been surprised to see that you were a black man and not connect the name Nate Daring with a black man? I want to say I hope I would not be, but I don't know. That's been a hard question for me to ask myself.
No.
Sometimes maybe we need to ask ourselves those hard questions. And my friends, that's a little bit why we're doing this today, because it is all right to ask ourselves a hard question. I've done several hard questions in my life, and over the last few weeks, I've asked some pretty deep questions of myself, and it's been an enlightening and, yes, at times an uncomfortable experience because I haven't always liked the answers. And so I'm grateful, to be able to explore this conversation today. So as Nate and I continue talking, we invite your questions. If there's comments, if there's thoughts, we'd love to have your questions be part of this conversation. Whether you're seeing this live as we're doing this right now, or you're catching this on the replay, ask your questions, share your thoughts. And I promise you one thing, I will 100% respect the opinions that you share. I may agree, I may not agree, I may be neutral on it, but I will respect your opinions. I just simply ask the opinions that are shared in a respectful manner. But ask those questions. Let's continue this conversation. If you've got questions here, pop them in. I'll take a look right here, and if there's some questions, I would be, I'd be glad to, we'd be glad to address them. And so, Nate, would you? I'd like to look at two areas, if we could. What was it like growing up as a black man, as a black person, as a black kid? What's it been like and by the way, as a biracial black kid? And then what has it been like as a black adult? You've lived in adulthood, you've lived in Cache Valley for about 20 years, and that's where I call home as well. And you've been a business owner here in Cache Valley. So I'd like to look at kind of all three of those a little bit, starting with what it was like growing up, what it's been like as an adult, and what it's been like as a business owner.
Okay. Growing up, my dad was in the military, and I think the military does a really good job of trying to eliminate race. It becomes, instead of a person, it's a people, it's a brother and sisterhood. You are.
I experienced that. 24 years in the military. I remember thinking there's only two colors here: color of the uniform, and we all bleed red.
Exactly. Yeah. So growing up there, it was a melting pot. And what was fortunate was, we'd spend 3 or 4 years in each location. But the cool thing is you'd make friends, and then the next time at your next move, maybe some of your friends also were transferred there as well. So you could grow up with some of the same faces. But I had friends of all different races. I lived here in the States. I was in South Dakota, which I felt was a very white place. But on the base, you had kind of everybody. I went to Mississippi, which was a very predominantly black place of where we were at. Moved to England and did elementary school over there. And you're dealing with the same, all different colors, but everybody's got an English accent, and you pick up that accent. And then it gets weird because you come back here to the States and we land in New York, and you're a biracial little black kid with a British accent. And so you're not accepted in any way, and you start coming up with different voices to change that. So it wasn't until we started doing public school off base where you start really experiencing some different things there. And I've experienced some pretty bad racism. When I lived in Illinois, it was from black people. I wasn't black enough. My hair was too soft and too curly, and I didn't do the things that a lot of the kids were doing. I wasn't into the gang. I remember talking to gang members and asking them to teach me gang signs in case I needed to know that kind of stuff because of the neighborhoods that we were in. But some of my worst experiences were dealing with black kids because they knew that I had a white mother.
So you experienced racism, prejudice because you were not black enough.
Correct. Yeah. And then we moved here to Utah.
And how old were you when you moved to Utah?
16.
Okay.
And went to Layton, and all my friends were white. There was a very small group of black kids. They were also military. They were here because their parents were stationed at Hill Air Force Base. But everybody was white here. I had a girlfriend in Illinois who was black, and I came here and I didn't have a black girlfriend. I had a white girlfriend whose parents didn't like me because I wasn't white. And they said, you guys can just hang out and you can date and do this little thing, but there's nothing that's gonna come of this because we don't believe in this. And so, I've seen it from that perspective. I will say, to credit a lot of the kids my age, didn't make me feel like there was racism from them. It was more from the generation before. It was the parents, it was the older generation that made me feel that way. But I've seen it in all different places, and it's just something you get used to, and then you learn to take precautions with what you do. So
what do you mean by precautions?
You just have to mind your P's and Q's a little bit better in that situation where for example, if we're talking about dealing with law enforcement or police, and it's not just because of what's gone on in the last few weeks, but my whole adult life, you keep both of your hands on the wheel at all time. You don't do anything that you're not instructed to do. you have the best chances of not getting in worse trouble or hurt by doing that. Just because you follow the rules doesn't mean it works out. And I've heard that a lot from people online of, well, you know, if you're not getting in trouble, then you have nothing to worry about. That's not true. I've been profiled all the time. And it's not every experience is a bad experience. My car broke down a couple weeks ago in town, and I was blocking traffic. And the 2 officers that came and helped me out is the best treatment I've ever had from law enforcement ever. I didn't even ask for it. It was like overly nice. They called me sir, which made me feel like my dad. So,
do you think maybe they were overcompensating because of the environment right now?
you know, I'm not sure. I'd like to think that there's just some good police officers out there. Just like there's some good black people out there, and there's some good white people out there, and there's some good Asians out there. All black people aren't bad, just like all cops aren't bad, and all whites aren't racist. I think the struggle is what people of color are after is help, right? We make up such a small percentage of the entire population, yet we can make noise. Like you have celebrities of color that can use their social media influence and get people talking about stuff. I remember back years ago when Obama was running for president, and I remember watching MTV Music Awards, and I think it was Sean Combs, P. Diddy, who gets on and rather than accept the award, told people of color, you need to vote for Obama. I'd never even heard of Obama, but he told every black person that was watching that that's what they need to do. And we need to learn to start to think for ourselves and not just do what everybody else says. But yeah, we got to use our platforms for good. And in this regard, like I remember hearing years ago, like you get Dr. King in the march, and when it's just black people walking and marching by themselves peacefully, if you have such a small percentage doing that, you're not going to make the progress that you want to make. It's going to take support from white brothers and sisters. Right now, this is the opportunity, and it's not that we could have every black person stand up and say Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter, but until they matter to other races, it's not going to matter. We need white people like yourself to recognize, like, I'm not like this, but I see that there's a crisis and these guys need help, and that's what's gonna start the change. Is getting more people involved that are less like what's going on. As a kid, we deal with like bullies, right? Doesn't matter what color you are. Almost everybody's got a story of how they were bullied in school growing up. And you either were taught to fight back, right? Or you were a bystander and you watched it go on, or your parents raised you to make sure that if you saw somebody getting bullied, that you got in and you got involved. And what's gone on for years and years is people have been bystanders. And they've watched the big kid pick on this kid. They watch this person flip this person's lunch tray. They watch this person get pushed to the ground or get shoved in a locker. As America needs to be the kid that interjects and stomps the bully out. Eventually the bully will go away. That's how you get rid of racism. You've got to get the people that really aren't racist to see that they have the ability to make the difference.
So on that point right there, I'm going to extend an invitation, to our viewers. Nate has just asked us to be ones that can stand up, that can see things, and not just be bystanders. A conversation like we are having is one way of standing up. Mm-hmm. It's one way of not being a bystander anymore. My friends, think about what's a way for you. How can you stand up in your life? How can you make a difference in your life? Okay, let's transition into adulthood. What's it been like as a black man as an adult?
It's a little bit different. We talked a little bit about this earlier. I feel like a lot of people here locally don't recognize me as a black person. They think I'm Polynesian, Samoan, something like that. A lot of times
Do you think that's part because you are biracial?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think unless you know me, you have a hard time telling what makes my DNA up. I did a DNA test a few years ago to find out where I came from, and surprisingly enough, I'm 53% European and only 45% African. So I'm more Caucasian DNA in my body than I do black DNA. But it was interesting to see that difference there. My mom's a redhead, so I'm 15% Irish. I'm just kind of from all over the place. But I felt like I experienced more real racism as a child than I did as an adult, but I feel like as an adult, I feel like I get profiled a little bit more and questioned.
From a legal aspect, or from people being cautious, wondering if they're safe, just in general?
Yeah, like all aspects. I went down to Farmington Station a few weeks ago with a friend who was returning some clothes, and she didn't have a bag, she didn't have a receipt, she had some jeans, and she walked in, and she didn't go to the counter to turn in the jeans. She started shopping to look at other jeans that were there. And I just stood there and I was waiting, like, what are you doing? And she's shopping and she's throwing stuff on here and checking this stuff out. And we were doing this for 5 or 6 minutes, and then she went to the counter. I would never have felt comfortable doing that because my entire life I've felt profiled, and that I can't do that. Someone would think I stole the jeans that I brought in because I don't have a bag or a receipt. So you just take different paths and avenues. I would have immediately, I would have had the bag. If I didn't have the receipt, I would have tied a knot in the bag so they could tell that I didn't pick this up, and I would have walked right to the counter and gone through the process to get it refunded. And so it's just a different way that you just have a different mindset and a different way that you do things.
Yeah, I've never worried about that. I've never worried walking into a store and wondered, is somebody going to think I'm doing something wrong?
So that leads into like the other thing that you hear where people are talking about white privilege. And sometimes you'll hear white people say, what white privilege are you talking about? I have to go to work and I have to go and get a job and earn this money. That's the privilege that people are talking about, is you have the ability to do something and not have to go through what I have to go through. Yet we're trying to do the exact same thing. That's the difference of privilege. It's not anything that you bought or anything like that. It's just something that it's so natural that you don't have to worry about.
So for instance, there's been a lot of research done on the job application process. Mm-hmm. that names, if there is a black sounding name or even a non-white sounding name, they tend to be statistically measured, overlooked, for interviews for the next step, than applications that have white sounding names.
Yeah.
That's a little bit of what you're talking about. That's almost systemic, and I hope I'm using that term in the right aspect here, but it's kind of a systemic problem.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I made sure my kids have regular sounding names. I don't want to follow the narrative of what people are being told, like in inner cities. And I mean, the Black community talks about that. Like, you should name your kids like regular names. You don't need to follow the path of being a junior or anything like that just to keep that, so that your kid will have a better opportunity at something. I mean, some of the smartest people in the world are different culture and nationalities. And if you look at their life, for example, people that are Indian in India, or people that are Asian, their whole time is they're taught that America is amazing and it's this great place that you're supposed to go to for opportunity, but they're also told like education is everything. And so these guys are raised to become doctors and scientists and researchers and biologists, and education's key, and then you get here. Some of the smartest people that we have in the world are from other nationalities and other countries.
So it's like their parents, their previous generation, saying, okay, if you want to escape the poverty of India, for instance, you've got to get a great education, you've got to go to the United States, and you've got to become you know, a medical or an engineer or a scientist, something like that. Hispanic cultures, Black cultures say, if you wanted to get out of it, say, you know, you've got to name your kids different names, kind of thing. Powerful, again, something that I don't know if I would have consciously thought about. I'd like to bring in a question here. We've got a viewer that asks this question: what happens when Black Lives Matters is the bullies? That I'm interpreting, if I'm interpreting this right, Bethany, that you're asking that the bullies are the ones that are purporting to be Black Lives Matters.
Yeah.
What's your perspective?
That's currently what's going on right here. And I want you to understand that I view Black Lives Matter, the movement, the people that are going around and destroying things, as something completely different as the that are feeling the oppression. You know, I get on the news. I haven't gone to Salt Lake to go and protest and rally because I don't support destroying our community, adding more tax dollars to fix these things. Like, I get that you want to protest, but you need to be done peacefully. Like, stand in arms with your brothers and sisters and your signs and protest until something changes. But violence isn't the way to go about that. And so, you know, I'm not sure statistically on the percentage of it, but I would like to say that a high percentage of the people that are part of the Black Lives Matters protest are not even Black people. I think they're saying I'm supporting Black people, but they feel like they need to do violence. I have seen a lot of stuff on Facebook that it makes me sick. I've seen both sides of it. I've seen people attacking people of color, and I've seen people of color attacking people that aren't of color. Some of that has been some of the worst that I've seen. You know, teenagers. You know, I saw a group of 7 or 8 Black guys attacking like an older white person. Wasn't doing anything, just walking. I think they just took advantage of it. You know, you've got communities that are still like, they don't really care about the big picture. They're not trying to change and make a difference. They're taking this opportunity to see that law enforcement is kind of like walking on eggshells and doesn't want to do anything because they're afraid of what's going on. And so they feel they can do things and almost get away with it. Like, you're gonna have violence in every race. You're gonna have criminals in every race. You're gonna have hoodlums and thugs of every race. But collectively, like, we need to take care of that. Like, in the Black communities, when you see that, other Black people should be stepping up and taking care of that. And that leads into an entirely different conversation, which takes everything back down to, you know, absentee fathers and family courts, and we can talk about all sorts of uncomfortable conversations about problems that we have in America that's related to direct relation to what's going on in the home or what's not going on in the home.
And that's where I know, Nate, both you and I hope that even this simple conversation between two people, a Black man, a white man, can raise our own personal understanding.
Yeah.
That we will understand each other a little bit better, and that in turn, this conversation will pass on into our families. And that if we can impact our families, and not just today, this isn't a conversation just for today, but this is a conversation that can continue, that we can be ones to stand up, that we can be the ones to say, this isn't the right thing. However is the right way for us to do that. Because if we impact the family, then we're going to, if we impact first the person, then we're going to impact a family. And then we're going, whatever that family is comprised of, then we're going to impact the next step, which is a neighborhood, you know, or a place of employment, or our community, or our church, or an organization that we volunteer at, our school, because we became just a little more educated.
Yeah.
So I'm going to throw in a comment here. This comment comes from a friend of mine named Marge. Marge is a Black woman. I think that's a perspective here. And she's talking about, you know, she says, someone who's angry can be a bully, but Black Lives Matters itself cannot be a bully. I think that's a powerful perspective, and she is addressing the question
Oh, okay.
that was raised there. I forgot to clarify that. So Bethany, thank you for a thoughtful question, which is a valid question. And Marge, thank you for a thoughtful answer on that. As we get ready to wrap up here over the next 10 minutes or so, if you have any other questions, please feel free to ask them. Nate, let's, if we can, talk a little bit about business.
Okay.
A lot of people that listen to Red Edge Live and that follow along with what I'm doing and what Red Edge Mentoring is doing are involved in business. Business owners, business leaders. You are a business owner. You've been a business owner for almost all the time that I've known you.
Yeah.
What's it been like as a business owner? And I guess specifically we do have to say here in northern Utah, because that's where you have been a business owner, recognizing experiences elsewhere may be different and different for other people, but for you, what's it been like for you as a business owner, as a Black man who is a business owner in northern Utah?
I would say overall it's been a pretty positive experience. I've developed a lot of friendships, loyal clients that continue to come back. I've never felt like things have been anything racial when it comes to that. I try to conduct myself in a positive manner. I mean, this takes me back to when I first got into my career, and I remember my boss telling me that my phone voice was too urban, and he sent me to a class. I remember it was called Power Phone Ups, and they teach you to enunciate things correctly because he wanted his clients to not be able to tell that, I came from a certain area. And I've spent a lifetime changing my voice. Like I said, I had an English accent for years. And so as I went through, going through these classes to enunciate, a lot of people have done that whole surprise thing if we have a phone conversation and then they see me.
So let me ask you one question on that. Do you think, or did you feel that was like a racial thing that he had you go get that class? Or was that something that this particular owner would have had other people as well that may have?
Yeah, it was a racial thing because there was just two of us. There was me, and then there was another guy that was full Black, and we both attended the class.
Okay.
Nobody else had to attend the class. So, and I didn't feel like I had an issue with enunciating or an accent or talked too urban or anything like that. I do feel like I have a different type of voice. A lot of people seem to be surprised by my voice. Or the way that I enunciate or articulate things.
I have a friend, this is back in our college days, he came from the East. He was in New England. He came here to Utah State, and he had a very deep, hard to understand at times, I guess we'd say a New England accent. And he worked really hard because he recognized once he became an adult that a lot of people had struggled to understand his voice. So, he was white, but he recognized that it was hard for people to understand. It was hard, and we were friends. We worked together for like 3 years, and it was hard for me to when he got excited.
Yeah,
it was hard.
Comes back out. Yeah,
it was hard for me to always catch what he was saying.
Yeah.
But what you experienced wasn't just, let's help your voice become, more professional. It was help your voice to not be as Black?
They didn't use those exact words, but they said it was too urban.
Okay.
And so, I was young. I was 18, 19 years old, and so didn't look at it the way that I would look at it today and make a big deal out of it. It's something like we talked before, like I've experienced some form of racism like always through my life. So it was one of those things that you just kind of just took it. You wanted to work here, so you went through it. We're products of our environment and creatures of habit. Like I feel like I've been told that when I get around my sister or other family members that my voice changes to kind of be more like them. I catch myself at work. I have a very large Latino community of customers, and I know that although I don't speak the best Spanish, even when they speak to me because they're using their accent, eventually, as we were talking, I feel like I've picked up a little bit of an accent as I say things back in English. And I think we all do that to some degree.
I've lived in the South 3 different times, and I find when I go back to the South to visit, I find myself picking up y'alls,
Yeah.
just some of that I had when I lived there.
Yeah. And I don't think that's derogatory. I don't think it's racist. I don't think people are making fun. You want to fit, and you want to be like everyone else around you.
So as you continued into business, business here in Cache Valley in northern Utah, overall, you feel it's been, race has not been an issue overall for you?
I would say overall, no, it has not been, but it doesn't diminish that others would probably feel differently.
It has been.
But all people of color don't have the exact same experiences. There's going to be people online, famous people, that will say, I've never experienced 1 ounce of racism. It's because I was minding my own business and I was doing what I was supposed to do. And that may be their own personal story, but it's not every person's story.
But just the fact that maybe they had to mind their own business was...
I have minded my own business and been in a very bad situation before. So it's, and I think a lot of people have, whether you're a person of color or not. Sometimes you're just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And so, but yeah, I would say, business-wise, things have been pretty good, Cache Valley. But then again, I will tell you that I feel like a lot of people bite their tongue and don't say what they really feel. It's taken this movement to be talked about to really see like true friends. And like I said before, you got a handful of people that I've got friends that are on my Facebook page and I haven't unfriended them. It doesn't change anything. I definitely want to see the comments because it's helpful. But I could say 20 different people on my news feed that say racist things. What's cool to see are their friends who will jump on and say, you're part of the problem. And they're sticking up for the bully, at that particular time. So I think I'd rather have hard conversations about race and talk about it openly than have everybody just think their own opinion and not talk about it at all. Because that's where things go bad. So.
Awesome. Well, Nate, I'm going to turn and see if we've got any final questions. Sure. And then I do have one last question that I'm going to ask. What could I do more today? From this conversation moving forward, what would you suggest that we're not talking anybody else, right. Just what could I do more?
I would say teach your friends and your children and your family to be more open-minded and look at things from others' perspectives. Use your influence and your platform to have those hard conversations with people, and know that you're gonna lose some friends over having your own thoughts and not thinking like them. But at the end of the day, like you're taking steps backwards if you value those friendships and need to feel like that. Keep trying to push forward with the narrative that we need to change. Like as a people, we need to change. We need to get past all of this. But it's not just sweep it under the rug and get past it and just get over it. But let's fix it. Let's repair and let's heal.
Okay. Well, thank you, Nate.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And I give that pledge to you as a friend and in honor for you having this conversation with me. I give you that pledge. And I give it to whoever chooses to see this. I give you that pledge that I will continue to try to better understand, on my own. And I will continue to use whatever influence that I have as a person, as a business owner, to be one who stands up. And
appreciate that.
Find my way to continue to have healthy conversations. Because I too believe that one voice makes a difference.
Agreed.
And I want to be part of the healthy discussions. I want to be part of the healthy conversations that can make a difference. And I believe together, and I believe that means with you, my friends, together, each one of us has a voice that makes a difference. Nate, thank you very much.
Thanks for having
Thanks
me.
for joining us here on Red Edge Live. It's been Nate Daring, Les Patterson. My friends, it truly has been an honor as you've joined with us today. I hope we've stirred something inside you, inside your heart, inside your soul. I hope you've asked yourself, like I've had to, ask yourself some hard questions. I hope some of those answers are not easy to come to, because when answers are not easy, then we go on a quest. And going on a quest right now is a good thing to do. And I hope you find a way to, as you better understand yourself, to help those that you influence, be that in your family relations, your community relations, your school relations, your church relations, your business relations, that you can influence those as well by being a voice of understanding. If you found something of value in this conversation we had today, please share it, and share it with a thought. Say, hey, this was an uncomfortable conversation, and it was uncomfortable, but I think it's worth listening to. Can we give voice, can we give some synergy to what Nate and I together are trying to do here in our own little way? Lastly, my friends, I'm going to leave you the same way I leave you every week. And take it in now into the context of the conversation that we've just had. Please remember that the story that you most consistently create for yourself, that's the story that's going to most consistently come true in your life. Be very intentional. Create a beautiful, a powerful, and a wonderful story. Create a story of love. Create a story of listening. Create a story of caring. That's what we're doing today. One voice makes a difference. Love you, my friends. Thank you for joining us today. Have a beautiful day, and we'll see you next week on Red Edge Live.